All right, I'd like to call our Academic Achievement Committee meeting to order. Today is March 2nd, 2022. And if we don't have any public comment, we will move forward with the Instructional Counsel update.
Right, so Ms. Davis and Ms. Williams, thank you for allowing us to present to you this evening. Tonight, Jonathan Harper will provide an Instructional Counsel update. So why don't I just go through the agenda really quickly. Jonathan will come up in a sec to give an Instructional Counsel update. There was a request for tiered interventions and extension supports. This is really around the types of interventions that are provided in schools, not only for students who may be exhibiting challenges, but also for students who are excelling in their classes. So we want to present to you on that particular topic. We will also be providing some intercession feedback. Intercession, of course, took place over the holiday break for 6 days over a 2-week period. So Eric Harmson will be presenting on that topic. And then to end, we will look ahead with some potential items for the next academic achievement meeting, as well as give you a snapshot of some graduation rates, as well as some of our goals as it relates to the Return to Learn plan. So with that, Mr. Harper, please come forward.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Gorman. Good evening, Mrs. Williams, Ms. Davis. Jane Neiman, the Instructional Council Chairperson, GREA representative, wrote the report, asked me to share it. She was not able to be here tonight, so I'm just simply reading her report on her behalf. So on February 17, 2021, the Instructional Council heard from the following presenters. Kevin Mahar, history teacher at Union High School, presented a proposal for an AP World History course. The Social Studies Department at Union High School already offers AP courses in U.S. history, government, and economics. Adding world history to the AP course offerings helps prepare students for AP and SAT exams by giving students earlier opportunities to improve their thinking, writing, and reading skills, and challenging them to meet college-level expectations. AP courses offered to honor students at the sophomore level also set higher expectations of students earlier in their high school career and translate into further success in the junior and senior years. Several honors level world history sections are already being taught by Mr. Mahar, and some of his students actually requested that this course be offered. The next meeting of the Instructional Council is scheduled for March 17th, 2022, respectfully submitted by Jane Neiman, chairperson for the 21-22 school year.
Do you know, Jonathan or Dr. Gorman, if that is an AP course that sophomores would be taking then? They would take it at the sophomore level? Is that what she's saying?
The AP U.S. history, yeah. So world history. There's AP U.S. history would be offered for ninth graders as a traditional class. So when we offer like an AP U.S. history, an AP world history, they'll do that concurrently. They don't have to take it as sophomores. Obviously, it would be offered at the higher level grades as well, but it is available to any students to take.
Okay.
So this would be an AP course. What is, I guess my question is there a deficiency with the world history course that's already in place? Is it not providing rigor for the students?
Well, I think the intent with the AP is to actually, because it's part of the AP College Board, and so if they take this class, then the students would be eligible to take the AP exam for college credit. So that is the benefit of offering that. So the AP course exams are done in the spring of each year, and if students score a 3, 4, or 5 on that AP course exam, then they actually can earn college level credit for that class, which is different from the traditional course track for graduation purposes. Okay. All right. I will just move into the next part of the agenda, which is, as Dr. Gorman mentioned, tiered interventions and extension supports. So one of the things that I wanted to share first is so that we all have a common understanding of what we mean by tiered interventions and extensions. So Tier 1 core instruction is really what every student, every scholar should receive, right? It's grade level, on grade level, high quality core instruction using, curriculum standards. So it's standards based, should be very explicit. Differentiated instruction is included in core Tier 1 instruction, okay? But there are multiple ways to do it, right? I mean, you may use flexible grouping with students. Of course, we want to have active student engagement. And this includes your classroom behavior strategies through instruction that all of our scholars experience in a classroom. And so when we talk about Tier 1 core, that's what we mean, is it is the curriculum core. But within that core instruction, and I do want to note too, there's on the top of that slide, I'm not going to read the whole slide to you, but we really want to ensure that at least 80% of our students are meeting the Tier 1 core, right? That's the goal. So it's important that learning and instructional delivery is really focused on Tier 1 core instruction. But however, we do know that sometimes students do need interventions if they're struggling with that Tier 1 core, or in fact, if they are excelling in the Tier 1 core, right? They may need some additional enrichment. And so that is the next component. So when we talk about Tier 1 enrichment and support, so this is really, when we talk about enrichment, this is about students that are really, they are excelling already at the grade level standards, but it is our responsibility to ensure that all students experience growth in learning, right? So we don't want students to, just because they're excelling at the grade level standards doesn't mean that it's okay for them to not continue to grow academically. So that's when we think about enrichment. And we have a number of very robust tools and resources and enrichment opportunities for our students to go above and beyond really what the grade level core is, if in fact that is needed. So that's when we talk about enrichment, that's a description for enrichment. But then we also talk about targeted Tier 2 intervention. So Tier 2 intervention is really for small groups of students based on academic data that is most likely classroom level data, teacher observational data, and maybe even, for instance, like a map assessment data that would indicate that there was a Tier 2 intervention that needed to be implemented. The intent of a Tier 2 intervention is to help students re-engage with the instructional core, right? Tier 2 interventions are not intended to be something that is ongoing, and the student and our scholars live in Tier 2 interventions all the time. The intervention is intended to help students regain and engage with the core. And so it should be data-driven and very explicit, targeted instruction on areas of need to help students re-engage. There's one other level is really tier 3. This is really intensive intervention. So this gets right down to the individual scholar. So some scholars do need very, very intense intervention to help them achieve academically. And so that's when we talk about tier 3 individualized intervention, and that can be a wide range of things. And that's not just tools, but also interacting with adults and support structures and things within the system. So that's really individualized support. So I wanted to give a perspective of the resources that we currently have in the system to support our Tier 1 core, right, and also enrichment, and then talk about the resources that we have for various interventions. So what you see on the screen here right now is really our core instruction. These are our Tier 1 resources, and you can see the schools that have these resources, and notice the content area focuses are really the core 4 cores and also learning management. So I did add our learning management systems on there because those tools are really Tier 1 core instructional tools. And so you can see that science, mathematics, English language arts, it's really system-wide. These are the resources that every school has. There are some select schools that would have some Spanish resources based on maybe a dual language immersion model or our language center model for those schools. But you can see where, and then Spanish curriculum. So that was one of the ones that was presented to this team more recently. That was one of our most recent adoptions for our 612 Spanish curriculum. So any of the schools that are teaching middle or high school Spanish would be using those tools. So that's why we have those select schools there as well.
How does a student get engaged with any of these tools?
So, how do students engage with any of the tools? So when we as a system put these tools in place, every student accounts are created through our MIS department in conjunction with the student data services. Okay. And the online tools are associated with the @students.grps.org Google accounts, and then they're all accessed through what we call our Clever portal, which is basically a one-stop shop. So students can log into Clever. Every one of the tools that they have access to, they can get to with Clever. Many of these tools also have print resources that then are provided through our library media services.
So these tools, for the most part, are student initiated?
No, this is not student initiated. So these are core instructional tools. So when we talk about mathematics, for example, in the systems, right? Go Math, we chose Go Math a few years ago. Those of you, I think most of you were on the team when we vetted those tools. And so when we talk about mathematics, core instruction, that is the core instructional resource in the system. K through 12 is the Go Math resource through Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. And so, yeah, to answer your question, no, that is not student driven. This is what the core curriculum, syllabi, assessments, everything are connected to. Now, I do want to emphasize when we talk about enrichment and Tier 2 intervention, these tools are very robust. So even what is built into the syllabi and coursework is not a reflection of everything that's within the tool. And so our teachers and support staff all have access to these tools to look at the student level data, right? Classroom data, assessment data that's used, and they can leverage these tools also to provide targeted interventions or enrichments through these platforms, above and beyond what is provided through the course syllabus and the unit mapping that is provided.
Do we have a way to measure how often teachers and support staff are using these things to support students?
There are multiple measures with that, and we have access to data through like our Clever portal and also our learning management tools that tell us when, who's using what, how often, the number of users, those sorts of things. We also try to look very closely at the data that is gleaned from the use of the formative and summative tools within these platforms.
Is it possible that you guys can bring some of that information to us so I guess for me, one of the things is it's great to have all these tools, but if the tools are not meeting the needs or if they're not being utilized, then
Sure.
What good is the tool? So that for me is important for us to be able to look at what the data is showing us, how are our teachers using these tools to support students, and then are we showing student growth and outcome from that as well? So,
Yep, Dr. Gorman will capture that and follow up. Thank you. And so I'm going to move beyond this slide because now we talk about the various intervention and enrichment tools that are beyond the core. Okay, so and you can see here. There's a pretty substantial list, and I would argue that probably what I've provided here is not exclusive, right? I mean, we're continuing to work with additional tools, but you can see, for example, if you look at Imagine Math, right? So thinking about mathematics. So we have Imagine Math, which is an intervention and enrichment tool that is available in all pre-K through 12 schools. and is intended to be used for both intervention, primarily Tier 2. It can be used for Tier 3, primarily Tier 2 interventions. There's a robust data set that comes from when students engage with these tools, so that teachers know, are students advancing academically within the particular concept or skill that they're trying to achieve at. And so teachers and principals have access to see that data. You'll see some of the schools have various tools, and so I've listed the schools that maybe have Imagine Math Facts, or for instance, Imagine Literacy, Learning Language and Literacy, schools that chose to use those decisions that the schools were made between the academic executive directors, the building principal, and the leadership team. So you'll notice some of them are at all schools, some of them were chosen by select schools to use. I'm going to just kind of slip through a couple of slides here. One of the things that Eric is actually going to talk about shortly is our intercession work that we did over winter break. One of the primary tool that we used for intercession was IXL, and so you see there in the top line where IXL is accessible in schools. And so it really is in all elementary, K-8, and middle schools. It's one of the reasons why we chose it as the primary tool for intercession, because we have scholars from all across the district that were engaging, and we wanted to make sure that we had a consistent tool to use. And Eric's going to give you some feedback that we gleaned from that regarding the tools for intercession. But then there's a number of the other ones there, and you can see, science, mathematics, social studies.
This question might be, I think, similar to what Kim was asking, but so these tools, so there's the core instruction. Mm-hmm. So math is taught with Go Math. So if you're a math teacher, you're using Go Math, et cetera. But these tools that are used for individual students who are behind? Are they the way some teachers are teaching the class, so they're using mystery science instead of, or on top of others? Are they school-based for entire groups of students that are in Tier 2 to catch them up? Or are these just additional teaching tools that make the classroom more interesting for the students?
So they are intended to be used as Tier 2 interventions for,
Okay.
It could be small group or individual
Okay.
students.
Okay.
But they could also be used for enrichment. And
Okay.
so you pulled out mystery science as an example.
Yeah.
So Discovery Education Science is our primary tool that this team adopted with several years ago now, and we've had it implemented. Mystery Science, we had some feedback from K-5 teachers that had some free accounts, so it was sort of a loose pilot of that. Discovery Education actually purchased Mystery Science, and so it became part of the same platform, and we were able to add that on with quite great success. And so that particular tool has an actual crosswalk to the units. So the K-5 units that are in the course syllabus for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, there's a side-by-side crosswalk to use with Mystery Science. Okay. So it really is both enrichment and Tier 2, and it does depend on the classroom level data that the teacher's using to enhance that instruction.
And then secondly, I really appreciate this, and I don't know if I didn't catch this before, but the 3 tiers. And it seems like, in my memory, we have done a lot with tiers 2 and 3. And I don't mean we have done a lot, meaning we haven't done anything to tier 1, but the discussion in these meetings have been more around tier 2 and tier 3. How do we get kids to grade level? How do we get kids to graduation? How do we make sure they're reading by 3rd grade? I don't have a lot of memory of the tier 1, so I think it's really good that you're phrasing it that way, and because all kids are expected to grow, even kids that are at grade level. So, and that's one thing. That's one area where I just don't feel very knowledgeable about what we do for kids that are on grade level, especially at the high school level, electives or other kinds of opportunities for them to be engaged in learning beyond the grade level expectations. So I appreciate having this, and I'm also interested in knowing more about what we're doing for those students, because the students that meet grade level still need to have the extra opportunities to be ready for college, extra level writing and reading and comprehension.
Absolutely.
And also just to keep them engaged, because
Yeah.
they already know what is being taught. They get bored.
Or even to have them engage again in a different way about history. I just left a social stratification class where I asked my students when the Civil War occurred. And, they were within 100 years or so. I mean, to be fair, they were not, none of them were GRPS students. So they're not learning.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll just throw out there too, because I have elementary kids, so this is for elementary, but a lot of the tier 1 things that I see on there, my kids have at least been introduced to them in class as like a tier 1 enrichment, so that at home they can utilize those. So as a whole class, the teachers introduce them and show them how to use that, and then can assign individual things for growth at home as well.
Part of the reason why this conversation, I think, is important is the Tier 1 core instruction is really, I mean, if we talk about equity lens, we have to make sure that all students receive that, right? And that in addition, all students, as needed, receive the additional Tier 2 supports, right, or enrichment, so that all students can grow. We've all gone through a pretty challenging time in the last couple of years, trying to help students continue, our scholars continue to learn and keep learning moving forward. But I'm happy to have an opportunity to continue to talk about and really re-emphasize the importance of Tier 1 grade level standards-based instruction, because that is what will help our students. Our students deserve to achieve that way. So I know there's a lot on the slides. I'm happy to follow up or answer any other questions. Like I said, this is not this is likely not an exhaustive list, but it gives you a pretty good lens at what's out there and who has access to it and the purpose of the tools. So please let us know if you have any other additional questions or details. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mrs. Williams, Ms. Davis, and Dr. Baker. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk a little bit about intersection feedback. And just as a quick review, intercession winter break learning was new for K through 8. So for several years, Mr. Lewis has been running credit recovery for high school, but this is new over a break, usually a non-school time that we've done something for our K-8 students. We had 12 teachers, 4 administrators, and around 125 scholars who participated. But the purpose of this session is to talk about feedback that I received from running two feedback sessions with 12 teachers and 4 administrators. So we had 3 teachers who could not make the first session, so I wanted to really make sure that we got their feedback, everyone's feedback, and voice was important, so we ran a second one. And really what we wanted to do with the survey was 2 things: evaluate the program, because it's the first time we had done it, so what worked well, what didn't work well, what could we do differently. You are the ones who used it and did the work. Let us know how it worked for you and how it worked for our scholars and what we can do differently if we do it another time. But we also wanted to ask some questions around what did you learn that you could use to in your practice, your daily practice during the regular school year. So those were the 2 things that we really wanted to get out of it. So I'll go through some of the feedback. I'm not going to read through all of it, but I do want to highlight some of the things that worked well. One was grouping scholars by school. I was able to ask other teachers what students needed. So I knew I had my class roster before Intercession started, and I could go talk to those teachers, and they could give me some background. They did also have some data, but also they could get some background from their teachers. The other really thing that was, it's always great to do these, that the teachers really liked is that they had some scholars who they didn't know, who knew them now, and they would get hugs in the hallway, like, I had all, I'm a fifth grade teacher, and I had first grade and kindergartners coming up and hugging me, and so they really like that. As Jonathan talked about, we used IXL, and they thought that worked well. It was targeted and flexible, so it was also differentiated. So IXL is able to take in what the scholar inputs into the lesson, and then it can differentiate the next lesson for them. The SEL lesson, so part of the daily routine where most teachers did a SEL lesson during it. They did morning meetings, and then usually often did either relationship building or SEL lesson with their scholars, and then went into the learning for the day.
Do you know where the SEL lessons came from? Is that like a curriculum, or was it?
So there were some lessons that were built in Seesaw that they used, I
Okay.
believe. That was again a positive, because then they started some of the things that they learned that they spread to their schools and their other teachers in their building. I'll talk a little bit about that later. They really liked the perfect attendance shout-outs from the administrator, so for the scholars, and also how to integrate other tech. And it was nice. The other nice thing of having all these teachers together is that they were together at the beginning for some professional learning and had some time to work together. But at the end too, they shared some ideas that worked and didn't work, and they come away. Oh, I'm going to try that in my classroom after this. Some things we could have done better, could have been done better, as social worker, mental health professional, make sure it was available. There was some debate about iPad and Chromebooks for young scholars, depending on who the teacher was. Some of them preferred iPad, some Chromebook. Grade level scholars, so we grouped our scholars by building, and that worked well, other than sometimes some of the teachers had a lot of different grade levels, but because it was more targeted toward tier 2, we felt it was okay to have a lot of different grade levels in, because it was more about the skill building rather than if I'm in second grade or fifth grade, or it was more about what are the what are my skills. Scholar attendance was pretty good, but again, scholar attendance could have been better.
Did you get the impression that most of the teachers liked the school-based? Because it was in both. It was in the. It worked
Most
well.
of them liked it because they could get to know the scholars ahead of time, ask teachers. I think if we had more scholars who participated, we could have maybe broken up the ages a little more. It was a little difficult to have K through fifth grades in a classroom, so we'll look at that for next time. Some of the feedback that I got were parents were very appreciative. So parents with scholars in it were appreciative that their scholars had the opportunity to do intercession. So we don't have the quantitative data yet, but qualitative data already. I saw improvement in effort. Scholars end up building academic stamina. I had a parent profusely thank me for working with her son during the winter break. She said something clicked, and he is excited about learning. It was very touching. With IXL, we learned some things about it. They liked using IXL. One of the reasons was because it's more, sometimes when teachers move scholars into tier 2 or tier 3 interventions, everybody knows, right? I know with IXL, a scholar could be working on enrichment or intervention and nobody knows. So they thought that was a really a great reason to use IXL. In fact, I'm telling other teachers to jump in and use it. So that's, again, the teachers that used IXL and were in the intercession are really going to help integrate IXL into schools. So that was, IXL does not stigmatize because it's used for remediation and enrichment. So that's one of the teachers said. So next steps, feedback surveys to scholars and parents. So we're in the midst of that right now, collecting data from scholars and parents. We had a survey go out in 5 different languages to parents and scholars. We decided that we would only do it 3rd through 5th grade, and then our middle schools at K through 2 would be hard to get feedback from. So applying what we learned to summer school, tutoring future intercessions, and then applying what we learned daily to our daily teaching and learning. And I'd like to give a great shout out and thank you to the teachers, Mackenzie Ritzma, Marcy Obuhanich, Sarah Cawley, Naomi Ariano, Kelby Lavoy, Laura Kenworthy, Jim Walsh, Benjamin Music, Taryn Even, Randall Levi, Mo Herringer, and Barb Dodge, who taught and participated in these feedback sessions, and our 4 administrators, Victoria Simon, Thomas Standiford, Mike Perez, and Tim Mabin. Any
Thanks for
questions?
saying all of their names. I think that was nice. So just reading it. There will, you might have said this, but will there be like follow-up in terms of impact on their grade level work later?
Absolutely, yes. Yep. We're really excited to see.
Yeah, it'd be great to just show if it's like just a slam dunk
Yeah.
benefit. So
Right.
I'm sure the world doesn't work that way, but but it would be nice. Yeah.
But just to hear those comments about, a scholar feeling so much more confident about his
That's just-
work and
that's fantastic.
his mindset about being a learner is awesome.
And it's a different mix of kids too and teacher that they're interacting with, which can be nice sometimes.
Yeah, a couple of teachers said, yeah, I had scholars who were in my intercession feedback asking, can I be their teacher? Can you be my teacher?
Building relationships. Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you so much.
Okay, so the last portion of our presentation is, of course, looking ahead. Ms. Davis and I had a session to discuss, what academic achievement may look like moving forward. So here are a couple of items that we would like to discuss moving forward. Of course, we're talking about the strategic plan themes, objectives, and initiatives. We're hoping to get to a place where the strategic plan drives our work. So if that is the main driver of what we're doing in the school district, then we should be referencing that strategic plan in every one of our academic achievement meetings. SAT has made some significant changes moving forward, so we're going to have Mr. Lewis, who is now our resident expert in SAT, next time give a presentation on that, or else another topic of your choosing. But just so you're well aware of our thoughts on how the meetings could be structured moving forward, really thinking about 2 or 3 standing items. Okay, so the first of which would be instructional counsel. We always want to ensure that we're giving our instructional counsel report. Secondly, the ESSER plan as it relates to academics, so that we would like that to be a standing item. And then, of course, as I referenced before, the strategic plan work. We have a significant amount of dollars with ESSER that are earmarked for academics exclusively, so we want to bring that to your attention every single time. And then after that, we're hoping to have at least one other topic in addition to those 3 standing items. So instructional counsel, ESSER, strategic plan, and then another item that we can dive into like SAT changes, grad rates, or something comparable to that. And we thought that would create a nice flow so you know what to expect every single time, but then also one item you may want to hear a little more about. So does that make sense moving forward? Of course, if there are items, consult with Ms. Davis and she and I will connect and our team will put together the presentations. Does that sound appropriate?
Yeah, I think the questions I have probably fit under a strategic plan. Like, I mean, I am kind of interested in the conversation that started earlier, what do we do for, students at grade level for post-secondary planning, not just higher ed, but, so that's enriching those academies and electives at the high school level. But that I know fits under the strategic plan, so.
Absolutely.
So it's not really a separate.
And we also just talked about embedding equity in all the topics that are presented.
Great catch, Ms. Davis. Thank you.
And how we might be able to ensure that student voice is a part of these meetings. And just being mindful of which schools are represented. Can we have representation from the entire district at these meetings?
So representation from all schools in the district, ensuring that equity is woven into all topics that we discuss. And then we're hoping to either share some student voices with you, invite scholars to the meetings to possibly present on something that we're really proud of, or share some projects that students are working on, or something comparable to that, if that makes sense. Okay?
Sounds great.
And then two final items. The Return to Learn plan required that school districts, of course, assessed all of their scholars and created goals. So we had to assess our scholars when they came back for this school year, and then periodically throughout the year, through our MAP assessment, we had to monitor how well they were doing. So those are some items that we will have to present to you as quickly as next meeting, just to give you an update on this is how our scholars started this particular school year, and this is where they are currently. So we're going to share that with you. And then graduation rates have just been released. As you are more than aware, we've had about 9 years of improvements with graduation rates in our school district. Last year we were 80.62. We took a slight dip this year to 78.93. So that's a 1.69 dip. The next time we come back to you, we're going to, either the next time or the time after, create a comprehensive presentation for you that not only shows our scores and the breakdown of all buildings, but how we compare to the state. So that you don't have to wait to see how we compare to the state dipped 1.6 points. But as I was going over the preliminary data with Mr. Lewis about how districts did regionally, we're seeing some significant dips across the county as it relates to graduation rates. So it really doesn't matter how we compare. I mean, our first priority is our scholars in the school district, but to provide some context, we didn't want to share with you, we dipped a little bit and then the state grew or the county grew significantly. We want to share that with you so you have the big picture. If someone says, well, how come you didn't improve for 10 years in a row? We did take a slight dip, but if you all know with data, goes up, goes down a little bit. But it will be an area of focus because we're really proud of the work we've done the last 9 years, and we want to keep that going.
That was going to be my question. But, I mean, so we're talking about people that would have graduated in June of 21.
We are correct.
Who spent junior and senior year during COVID.
Yes.
Right, so.
There's a tremendous amount of work that is done to improve graduation rates, and we're very proud of that. That said, there were some extenuating circumstances the last couple of years, but no excuse. We'll go back to the drawing board, and we will try to get better. Any questions or concerns as it relates to moving forward?
And if you have questions about, we did discuss specific topics, and some of you have shared those with me, so I have a list if you want to see that.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, meeting adjourned.